Hello and welcome to The Big Fight, a show that is young at 21, the oldest running debate show on Indian primetime television. I'm Sanket Upadhyay. We are discussing the fudged rating scam, but it is very important now in this discussion to move beyond personalities, howsoever irritating or damaging for the profession they may be, and concentrate on institutionally fixing this rot. It was on this very network where for 12 years we've been saying that ratings as a concept is inherently flawed and corrupt, the manner in which it is being done. But even if we were to assume that there's nothing wrong, no corruption, let us now take a look at this presentation on how it works and how that itself is the worst possible way to analyze what India seems to be watching. So what are television ratings? How are they calculated? So as far as the latest estimate is concerned, there are 20 crore TV sets with set-top boxes or DTH boxes. People meters which measure ratings. So by the way, those 20 crore boxes translate roughly into 84 crore viewers. The people meters, these meters decide the ratings, are only 44,000. This, by the way, 10 years ago was far less. It's 44,000. Now let's talk about English news. I'm not going to get into other metrics. But how are TV ratings calculated? Only 700 meters for English news monitoring. 700 meters are deciding in this country what the whole nation is watching. So for every 1 crore household, only 35 people or 35 TVs are deciding English news ratings. That means they will monitor 35 households and decide that 1 crore people are watching this. Do you get the problem? So this Dashera, let's kill the ratings drama. Ratings is actually killing TV's credibility. It's a debate between RIA SSR versus COVID economy. We've been having this debate again and again, drawing room conversation. It's time to make now a very, very clear choice. Should India junk television rating points? And is it time to rate credibility instead? Credibility rankings, not television rating points. So NDTV is initiating an alternative to the rigged ratings. On The Big Fight tonight, should we move to a national credibility rankings for news television? We can start this debate. It's a solutions-oriented discussion or a debate, whichever way you may want to look at it. Let's start talking about this at least. Don't talk personalities and individuals. Let's talk of the problem. Also on the show, we'll have former INB Minister Manish Tiwari. He'll be speaking on rigged ratings. This new system of BARC ratings actually came about. He initiated that process when he was the INB Minister, and then other ministers took over. Okay, so let's start our discussion. Let me introduce our guest this evening on a very, very important solutions-driven debate. Ashutosh, he's the former editor-in-chief of IBN 7, which is now News 18 India, but he's a senior journalist now. He's with us, Maya Mirchandani, journalist and professor at the Ashoka University. Madhu Trehan, senior journalist and author of Tehelka as Metaphor, and also runs newslaundry.com, which is a fantastic platform, a subscription-driven platform. Jawahar Sarkar, former CEO of Prasar Bharati, is also with us. Rajat Sethi is a political analyst, is also with us. Supriya Shrinate, spokesperson of the Congress Party, is also with us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this extremely, extremely crucial discussion. Let's first begin by what we call the first punch, where all of you get 1 minute of uninterrupted time to air your views and your concerns or whatever you may want to say as far as this subject is concerned. We're talking about the solution, rate credibility instead of ratings. Ashutosh, you go first. Your 1 minute begins now. The first one.
Sanket, this entire controversy has put forward what was always whispered in the corridor of media. I think anybody who has been at a senior position in the TV industry, they knew that the television ratings were being rigged. And maybe they also knew who were the people who were doing it. But since nobody had any evidence, nobody has any sabut, so nobody could move forward. Nobody could exactly tell who are the people who are doing it. But I think after this press conference which has been done by the Mumbai police, this is very, very clear because the TRP rating is basically responsible for not only the dumbing down of the content, but is it also responsible for creating a kind of crisis, credibility crisis for the TV industry? Because in the last 2.5 months, what has happened? The three unprecedented crises this country is facing, and which has been historic since partition, since independence. But what the whole country was discussing is Riya Chakravarti and Sushant Singh Rajput, as if this was the biggest, subject which India wanted to know.
Yes,
so
Ashutosh ji, we'll come back to you. The 1 minute for the opening comment is over, so we're going to come back to you. Ms. Maya Mirchandani, your 1 minute time. Okay, we seem to have lost that audio connection on Maya Mirchandani. Apologies. We are going to come back to you. Maya, we'll come back to you in just a short moment and fix that audio connection. Madhu Trehan, senior journalist Madhu Trehan is also with us. Yes, Ms. Trehan.
I would just like to correct you that I am not running News Laundry. I am now an independent journalist with experience of 49 years.
Absolutely.
So that's one correction. To get into this issue right away, first of all, NDTV filed a case, as you know, in 2012 against the Nielsen Group and the Kantar Group and TAM India in New York, objecting to this kind of manipulation of the ratings. And that was the time when it first came up. And again, in July this year, the News Broadcasters Association, which represents over 24 broadcasters, also brought it to the attention of, in a letter to BARC, that these numbers were being manipulated. And this is actually old news, because in April this year, in April 2018, 7 persons were booked in Gwalior, accused exactly this of leaking details of households and approaching channels for money to manipulate the ratings.
Correct.
This happened again in Karnataka. It happened in Telangana, it happened in Madhya Pradesh,
Correct.
It happened in Kerala. So this is not a new problem.
Okay.
All right. Now, one thing I have to say is that...
Ms. Trehan, if you allow me, the 1 minute time allotted is over. So I'm going to come back to you once we finish this whole round, and you can complete your point. Maya Mirchandani, I'm being told, is now back. Yes, Maya.
Yes, Sanket, I'm so sorry. I had some audio connectivity issues at the start of your show. So I missed your opening comments, and I also missed Ashutosh's opening comments. But, you know, without getting into the issue of TRP manipulation in terms of the case that has now been filed, of course, it's grave and egregious. I think my point that I would like to sort of make and posit to the rest of the panel is, why are news television channels actually pursuing this television rating point system? The news is something which is meant to be of the public good, for the public good. It should be done irrespective of what numbers you get for what is being put out there. I mean, the fact is that because television channels, news channels like NDTV as well, which I've been a part of for the longest time, as you know, we ran after these ratings. The ratings were sort of linked to how much revenues we'd get from advertisers. So the entire sort of model of funding, the model of revenue, which was dependent on a flawed mechanism, I think has really sort of destroyed the value of news. And for me, that's a bigger conversation.
Absolutely.
Than the
that must be the conversation that must be had. Yes, Maya, we're going to come back to you in just a short moment. Mr. Sarkar is also with us. Yes. Mr. Sarkar, your opening comments for 1 minute.
You see, there's no doubt that the system is calling for reforms. There is no doubt that BARC was an improvement over TAM, a big improvement over TAM. But the fact is that it has also its leakages, which has been proved. And it happened again and again and again. The foot soldiers let them down in many cases. The question is, what do you replace it with? What do you replace it with? So that is the primary question. I was aware of, I was there when NDTV went to New York, and we had also lodged complaints against TAM. They threatened to take us to court. Anyway, now the short point is, we can do without BARC. I mean, the news channels can all come out of BARC. There's no harm. I mean, but then how do you measure credibility? The area of news channels, especially English news channel, is very small. It's only 0.02 or 0.03% of the whole TV pie.
Yeah.
But they do get advertisement beyond their share. Now, this is very critical, not only for sustaining the economics of TV channels, of independent English TV channels, but also to instill confidence back into the system.
Okay, Mr. Sarkar, I'll come back to you. Yes, I'm going to come back to you. Rajat Sethi.
Thank you, Sanketji. I think we all, by and large, agree that this is an antiquated system. This no longer serves the current time. And today, because of the digital TV, Dish TV is spread out in all households, as well as other possible metrics where you can, through AI tools and through digital, getting a sense of who is watching what, can be a pretty good, reliable, replaceable methodology. But you need to understand that TRPs are essentially the preserve of the advertising arm of any media channel, and they are the ones who have to deal with common people. Common viewers don't care much about TRP. They will get hooked to whichever channel they can relate with. The kind of discussions that are there, one can easily relate with that. But please keep it in mind that you cannot replace one malice with another. If you come out with this credibility rating of sorts, where you give the power to a certain section of elites to determine which channel has more credibility vis-a-vis the other channels, it is going to land up in the same trouble that social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter are facing.
I just started this conversation. We've not even decided who is going to head this credibility ratings agency. I think slightly presumptuous that is going to be elites who will decide. It can be anything. The purpose of this discussion is to start a conversation along these lines. Yeah, one more. Supriya hasn't spoken. Supriya Shinet.
Thank you very much for that. And I don't just speak as a Congress spokesperson, I speak as a former television journalist. And I remember Thursdays were stressful because your ratings would be out. It was a measure of all that you've done that week. And we all knew it was a very flawed system. I have two things to add to what some of the speakers have said here. Number one, this is not about an individual or a particular channel or anything. I think this is about cheating the viewers. What happens when you inflate ratings and when you base a certain programming on the basis of that, you make everybody else follow suit. And so what happens is that you invariably end up cheating your viewers with a very, very false propaganda. The second thing is it involves public spending, because advertising is a function of your TRPs, not just private, but also government expenditure happens on the basis of TRPs, which means public spending is being fooled by masked and fake TRPs. And that is money you and I pay as income taxes. That is money being collected from common citizens. And that is where I think the debate should also move, that this TRP system or whatever else follows
how this is manipulating
needs to be on
not
a
just the
foundation
ratings, not just money, but even
right
the minds.
And which reflects the truth.
Yes, Mr. Nate, I'm going to come back to you very quickly, Mr. Sarkar. I want to come back to you. You know, the nature in which this rating system was adopted and invented, so to say, it was a tool for advertisers. This was a currency for advertisers, not for viewers. Certainly not to decide your editorial policy. It was for the advertisers to ascertain where they should put their money. Do you think that has been the biggest problem, where suddenly, because we are talking money, even the editorial content became all about ratings, and it is propagated on channels as if this is the thing. That's what viewers care for.
Yes, I agree with that. That's completely commercially driven, and this madness about TRP. Even the INB minister recently mentioned about the TRP tyranny.
Yeah.
But the question is, what do you come out with an alternative? Because remember, liberals are completely smothered out when it comes to these public voting games. You've seen a report that has come out recently about how many million bots were created, false accounts were created to bolster, let's say, even the Riya Chakravarti TV shows. In these games, if you open it up, from a transparent system with all its faults. I'm admitting that the system is leaking. Otherwise, people would not be. But then if you open it up to, say, public voting, if you open it up to SMS or whatever, tweets or whatever, then remember, you are up against a machinery that is practiced and trained to take over the entire space of political debate. So you would be voted out.
So you're saying there's a larger chance of manipulation if this is completely opened up?
Completely opened up, and there must be some checks and balances.
Okay.
BARC is open to inspection, and BARC can and should make a public transparent mechanism for explaining how they are dealing with it. After all, remember, it's an industry body. So everybody's rivals are also there. That's a point. They are there. But I'm admitting that there are leakages. There were terrible leakages in the former TAM system. This is better, but
yes, a lot of people want to comment on what Mr. Sarkar is saying. I'll first go to Madhu Trehan. She raised her hand first. Yes, Madhuji.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions I would like to ask Mr. Sarkar. Is that when BARC bought TAM, and TAM had been discredited as a flawed system, did BARC do anything new other than just buy the existing property and put the same systems in? 1 second. That's one question. Secondly, when you have 80 crore television households, and then you have a system of 40,000 boxes that are being monitored, the ratio is so bizarre that it can't make any sense at all. Now, the point is that renaming a company does not change the system. And the point is that when there are $5 billion US being spent on ads, there has to be a more reliable system. Secondly, I do want to say that it is not only the TRPs that decide where the ads go. There is a lot of underground stuff that goes on, which means that there are pro-quid quo systems in place. The government gives the ads to friendly channels. There is a whole system which does not even address this issue. And one last thing I would like to bring in is that a BARC India spokesperson told News Laundry when they did a story on this last April, and I quote, he said, "Panel tampering is a legacy issue that is neither denied nor ignored by BARC India. It's linked very much to the social problem of corruption, which you will also agree cannot be wished away easily, even if we would love to do so." Now, that means we're giving up. That's really serious. We cannot give up on this.
Mr. Sarkar's right to reply. I think very pertinent questions have been asked of you, Mr. Sarkar.
Madhu Trehan has asked very pertinent questions, but one small identity crisis. I am not a spokesman of BARC, number one. I am not in the government, thank God. And I quit many years ago. The reason for coming in is that when TAM became a total nuisance, an alternate system had to come in. So that question of buying up TAM is not correct at all. TAM belongs to Nielsen and Kantar. It continues to be their property. BARC is an industry, is run by an industry board where, as I said, all rival channels are represented. They set up their own people meters at 1/10 the cost. But I am not saying that BARC is perfect in any way. All I'm saying is that having stumbled across a terrible period up to, say, 2015, this proved to be a bit of an improvement, quite an improvement from 2015 onwards. Now, if this system is cracking at the seams, it requires a change. But that thing about TAM being bought over is not correct. TAM continues on its own. So you need a system. All I'm saying is, for God's sake, go in for a transparent system.
No,
because
that's exactly the purpose of this discussion. And rate the ratings according to credibility.
Mr. Sarkar, I asked you this question in humility, not to put you on the spot. I wanted to know the system. I wanted to understand. That's why I asked you.
No, I'm perfectly okay.
Mr. Sarkar, I'm going to come back to you. One moment. Ashutosh. Ashutosh, see, the point is this very complicated discussion. In fact, you know, in newsrooms, often it is said, newsrooms where people they don't swear by ratings. It is said that this TRP mechanism and the whole model is like Duckworth-Lewis of cricket, right?
Yeah.
Nobody understands how it is done. Ashutosh, see, a common viewer will not understand. What a common viewer will understand, that an industry tool, something which is meant for advertisers, is being plastered on all screens as something which the viewers must consume. That we are number one, number two, number three. This is not information for viewers.
See, Sanket, I think, firstly, I let me apologize to by the senior colleagues on the panel. I think the problem lies not with the body of the beast, but problem lies with the beast itself. You know, what is the beast? Beast is the TRP, the nature of the TRP. Even if you change the body of the beast, the nature will not change.
Correct.
So if the nature will not change, the problem persists either this way or that way. So my understanding is the whole crisis in the television industry is not because it is because of the BARC or because of the TAM or because of some other agency. The problem and the crisis in the industry is because of the TRP itself. And I completely endorse Maya's viewpoint that why the news channels, why the news industry should be given points that this channel has got so many viewers, so this channel is a very, very popular channel and the quality should be very good. My point is that
because,
this
you know,
TRP
news channel is not entertainment. This is not entertainment. No matter how hard some people may try, this is public service. And it will not remain public service if you do what you're doing and if this devil called ratings exists.
So what I have been advocating for the last 10 years, that news business should be freed from the TRP things. The minute you will do that, because this is the only industry where the intern comes to the editor and says, boss, ये आप story चला दो तो आज हम TRP खेल जाएंगे इस पे. You know, when I was in the newspapers, and no person would have come to me and said, if you do this story, your circulation will increase. But in newsrooms, even an assistant producer, even an intern, even somebody who was a trainee.
A lot of people will hate me for saying this, Maya, but TRP for television channels has been some sort of a drug menace. Yes. This is almost like a drug menace in newsrooms.
Right. I completely see what you mean, Sanket, and we've all had to sort of suffer the addiction and the rehab from that particular menace. But, you know, I think by going into BARC and TAM and things like that, we're missing the wood for the trees a little bit. Yeah. And the reason I say this, I mean, we're in the digital age. This is like, you know, an analog system that we're still trying to kind of pursue. We have different metrics by which we can measure what news channels are doing in terms of credibility. For one, so many households in the country use DTH. So surely the DTH set-top box has a meter to gauge which channels people are going to more, which channels people are going to less, based on what subscriptions they have. That's one very easy metric. The second metric is, I think, just the impact of the news stories that someone carries. I mean, if you're carrying a news story, is there a real life impact on the ground? What is that impact? Is it harmful? Is it, you know, like I said, I mean, I think Ashutosh and I are on the same page over here, because this is actually, to me, an ethical question. And this TRP scam, you know, coming nearly a decade after people first started talking about the manipulation and the sort of corruption within the system, should be used as an inflection point by the news television industry.
Absolutely.
Is news television about chasing the TRP? To me, the answer is very clearly no.
I think that fundamental question has to be asked of by the editors, by the proprietors. But what do you replace it with is the question. I mean, surely advertisers know a lot about credibility. I'm sure, you know, they are the lalas, they have the money, so they know where to put their money. Please? Supriya Shine. Supriya wanted to come in. Supriya.
Sanket, you know, I think the point that we're also missing, and I say this, yes, I say this as a former journalist, I don't say this as a congressperson.
Yeah.
60% subscription model and of course 40% advertising model is how the world television industry operates.
Correct.
In India, the revenue model is flawed. It's 100% advertising. So we need to find ways to move away from how TRPs cannot be a decisive factor for advertising, because that's the only tool. I mean, England is now doing chips. We are talking about 40,000, home meters. in a 900 or whatever million viewer market. How is this going to survive? We need to move to a model. England is doing chips. Why can't we have voluminous households that can be tracked? It's very good to say let's move away from Bark or like we moved away from TAM, but we have to find an alternative model because Indian television is totally dependent and 100% dependent on advertising. Where is the money going to come from? And like any other industry, I agree, public service, but there are no free lunches.
You know, Rajat Sethi, I want to come to you. Rajat Sethi, see, the point is, say for instance, you were to be able to fix this corruption as far as the rating scam is concerned. But the manner in which the content is being produced, entertainment-ish content, that will ensure, see, it's a deadly cocktail of bad content and fudged ratings, which is leading to what we see in this present situation. While you fix ratings, the bad content will remain, which defeats the purpose. I mean, someone said it's an ethical problem. Of course it is. But then you expect that of journalists and journalism, right?
So therefore, what I get a sense, like there are all veteran journalists in your panel today, what I get a sense is that this is a problem of internal training, internal ethics that needs to be put in place, etc. Because at the end of the day, even if you change the TRP system and you come out with by installing a system or a software on these DTH boxes, you can very easily get all the details. If I were to put my computer science hat on, I can tell you that this is not rocket science. This is very much feasible. And you had subscription kind of a model.
But Rajat, tell me something. If it were that easy, why is it not being done? If you're saying, and this is a question asked by one of the viewers also, that it's simple. Everything is digital. You can track my DTH box or set-top box. Now, had it been so easy, it should have been done. Mr. Sarkar would know a thing or two, but first Rajat and then Mr. Sarkar.
No, my point is that innovation is actually driven by crisis. And whenever there is a crisis, and there is this crisis which has struck the industry, and innovation will have to come out of it. And I'm sure that there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there in the country, and for them, this is not a very difficult task. And they can come out with solutions and can approach the government, and the government can make it mandatory to put it up on
then at least one problem will be sorted. Yeah, one by one, Jawahar Sarkar.
No, but the larger problem here, the larger problem that Sarkarji raised was that how can the majority decide which channel is credible or which channel is not? And this is where the real slippery slope comes in. Now, if you do not rely on that metric, and then you will go to that same handful set of people which are going to decide which content should go, which content should be berated upon. And that is where...
Which is why I'm saying have a credibility rating system, and then we can start talking about how it is, what are the contours going to be.
Because you've been using the adjective, Sanketji, good channel, bad channel, good entertainment, bad entertainment. But these decisions of what is good and what is bad cannot be made by only a handful of people.
Absolutely.
And therefore, you need to have objective metrics, not subjective metrics.
Sure.
Sanket, can I...
Okay, yeah, Supriya, one moment. Jawahar Sarkar, the point on converting existing DTH boxes and set-top boxes into some sort of people meters.
I had asked exactly the same question in 2012, that if we have digital set-top boxes, why can't we read it from there? The answer was very technical. In no place in the world is that possible. Maybe in the future, when we have portable set-top boxes, you can move from one to the other, these things could be introduced. But right now, what is done all over the world is that each television channel is studied, and its audio signal is watermarked through a technology. It is an audio channel, it is an audio wave of the TV channel that is easily captured in these boxes. Now, I have a queasy feeling, and I may be wrong, that all of us are getting into one trap. Please reform the rating system. Please get out of the rating system. The news broadcasters can get out of the rating system, but don't go in for an open competition. You are up against a machinery that creates bots.
You have said this twice, which is very, very interesting. But I think, Madhu Trehan, would you agree that this the very fact that TV news television, which is a public service, has to go through this rating system is the problem, and we must get out of the rating system? Is it even possible?
Yeah, I think that is a problem, because as to take a little forward from what Maya said, there are certain professions that we practice where the money-making profit should not be the decision-making motive, in the sense that there are some things you do because they're supposed to be done. If you're doing it only to make money, there's a problem. But if you're doing a good job, such as good journalism or good medicine or a good teaching, and you happen to make money, then that's good. That's point number one. Secondly, I think that there is no way you can judge credibility. It's too subjective an issue. And the other thing is that how do these current news channels gauge whether the content that they're putting out is even good, or meaning is it watched? Because it's all obviously polluted. The TRPs are polluted. So how do they know that they're putting out the right thing? They're simply presuming that it is okay. It is the reports they're getting, but clearly they're not. So they're getting polluted reports. They are making decisions on their own subjective things that yes, this is right. But we don't know whether people are really watching these channels. And the same thing that happened with paid news that got dissipated, and which was a dreadful thing that happened and really made a terrible dent on journalism. I think this again is making another dent on journalism. Correct. And people who claim to be journalists or running news channels are really running just entertainment. And my feeling is that now that Big Boss is coming back after its hiatus in COVID, I think these so-called news channels or channel will see a dip, because they're going to go back to the real reality TV, which is Big Boss. And the point,
I understand what you're getting at, but see, the point is, very quickly, two comments before we end this discussion, Supriya Shinate as well as Ashutosh. See, Supriya, all of what we've heard from our industry veterans, the veterans, they seem to have always told us that good journalism is not always, in fact, very rarely is a profit-making venture. Good journalism cannot make money. You got to learn to make money from somewhere else. When you put a price tag, then there's a problem in journalism. Supriya.
They said that, but life has... But Sanket, they said that, and I remember Dr. Roy, the first day I walked into NDTV, told me, get it first, but get it right. Nobody cares about getting it right anymore. Things have changed. And please remember, we are talking about electronic media, where the biggest stakeholders are the largest corporates in this country. And we are not talking about the interest, the commercial interests involved here. That's not petty change for them. I mean, look at the corporate ownership of television channels across the spectrum. All I will say is that we don't want to bash one person, we don't want to bash one system,
that's
but
not
this is
the
a
idea.
flawed system. This is muddied waters and everybody has stepped into this.
I think you believe Mr. Sarkar, he says just get out of the system. Ashutosh as well as Maya Mirchandani, quick 10 seconds. Running out of time. Ashutosh.
Sanket, if news business is for the public service, then should it be weighed by the advertisers or by the impact on the society? And I think what is happening with the TRP is that in a changed political atmosphere, if the myth is creating that if you're playing a Hindu-Muslim card, and if that gets a TRP, then please do that. And where does it lead? It leads to the division of the society. So should we continue with that? Because most people are watching that.
Maya Mirchandani, see, you do need advertising in this model. I mean, that is how it works. In fact, my producer is telling me take a break. Otherwise, we'll miss commercials. Maya Mirchandani.
Yeah, what I have to say before you take a break. I know exactly the feeling. I've had it for years.
So 10 seconds. Quick wrap up.
I just want to say, I started my, I mean, for me, it's really surreal to be on the same show as a panelist as Madhu Trehan, because I started my career as an intern with Newstrack, terrified to go near her office door, but I learned so much from there. And from there, I mean, the fact that Newstrack did what it did because it had the power of telling a good story. The same thing when I came into NDTV, the mission was tell the stories. I mean, we worked India Matters, for example, this show that had no TRPs whatsoever, but every single award that NDTV has won for its reporting, most of them came into a show that had no ratings. What does that tell you.
Yes.
It has to be a story which is compelling, which is empathetic, which sort of tells people something that is useful and real.
Sure.
And I think we need to stick with the power of telling a good story.
Absolutely. Ashutosh, Maya Mirchandani, Madhu Trehan, Jawahar Sarkar, Rajat Sethi and Supriya Shine, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, we've got a commercial break pending. So thank you so much, all of you all, for joining us. Short break at this moment. When we come back, we speak to the former Information Broadcasting Minister, Manish Tiwari, on what he thinks was the experiment that was done to switch from an old ratings paradigm to a new one, and how this one too has become flawed. Back after a short break. All right, joining us right now is the former Information Broadcasting Minister, Mr. Manish Tiwari. In fact, Mr. Tiwari was also the minister when a paradigm shift took place as far as the ratings mechanism is concerned. Mr. Tiwari, thank you so much for joining us right here on NDTV. I'm not going to press very hard for your comment on individuals because I feel that this is a malaise which goes beyond individuals in question as far as an FIR is concerned. So unless, of course, you want to talk about it, I'm not going to press hard. But what do you think of the manner in which this TRP racket has been busted by the Mumbai police?
Well, Sanket, as you rightly pointed out, the malaise is as old as the liberalization of the broadcasting space in India and goes all the way back to 1996 when the first ratings started to be generated. The concern has been there ever since. In fact, if I recall correctly from the top of my head, Dr. Pranoy Roy wrote about it extensively in his book. In fact, if I do recall correctly, NDTV had mounted a very serious legal challenge, both in India and in New York, to the entire ratings paradigm.
Yes.
So therefore, this entire system, which is completely and absolutely opaque, is troublesome, and that is putting it mildly. In fact, in the January of 2014, responding to the concerns from the broadcast industry, I had put an overarching legal architecture in place. We had put policy guidelines which rating agencies are supposed to follow after approval by the Union Cabinet. Subsequently, those guidelines were challenged in the Delhi High Court. Some parts of it were stayed temporarily, but the rest of the guidelines were held to be in order. And under those circumstances, the only agency which was providing or generating ratings at that point in time decided to get out of the business. And the Broadcast Audience Research Council, which was recommended by the TRAI going as far back as 2008, and then there was the Amit Mitra Committee, then the TRAI re-recommended in 2012, and in 2013, Mr. Rahul Khullar, who was then the chairperson of the TRAI, actually threatened me in writing that if I were not to act on his recommendations within 2 months, the TRAI would step in and do that. It's unfortunate that those policy recommendations or those policy guidelines were not robustly policed by my predecessor, by my successors. Otherwise, the TRP ratings opacity would have been cleaned out.
No, Mr. Tiwari, so you're basically saying that the steps that you initiated in having this new system in place was not followed through, not upgraded, not updated, and the opacity only increased, because of which we see a scam unfold. The original system was foolproof. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the original system was flawed. The original system was completely flawed, and that's why the industry was complaining about it constantly. And that's why, as I earlier pointed out, NDTV had challenged it both in India and in New York, if I remember correctly. Dr. Roy has written extensively
Yes, he has.
In his book. So therefore, the system was broken. And that's why a need was felt that you need to put a regulatory
No, Mr. Tiwari, when I am asking you this question about the original system, I mean the original system that you put in place, the BARC system. Do you think that was foolproof? Because now it's very clear it was not.
Well, the Broadcast Audience Research Council was recommended, as I earlier pointed out, by the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India repeatedly from 2008 onwards. There was a feeling that if there is an industry body in which all the stakeholders come together in order to create a ratings agency, that perhaps would be far, far more credible and transparent than the system which existed earlier. And so therefore, the Broadcast Audience Research Council came up during the tenure of my successors, I think possibly Mr. Javadekar and then late Mr. Arun Jaitley. And of course, the policy recommendations or the policy structure was put in place when I was the minister in the January of 2014. But had the BARC system been more rigorously monitored by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and when aberrations were pointed out by the broadcast industry from time to time, if steps would have been taken in order to rectify or to take cognizance of those complaints, I'm sure we would not have seen the situation that we are seeing today.
So,
but
Mr. Tiwari, you're saying a police complaint was not required. I mean, had the central government, and which is the nodal agency here, the Information Broadcasting Ministry or the TRAI, any of these agencies done their job, then a police complaint would not have been required. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. The Information and Broadcasting Ministry is the licensor. They have licensing powers. And so therefore, if they did detect or if there were complaints with regard to a particular television channel or a group of channels trying to allegedly game the TRP system, if they would have acted, obviously, we would not have come to such a pass. But Sanket, there is a bigger problem. And the bigger problem is that the revenue models in the broadcast industry are completely and absolutely flawed. Globally, the revenue model is 60% subscription and 40% advertising. In India, the revenue model, unfortunately, is what I was trying to correct, even through the process of digitization, which we implemented in 2012 and 2013, was to correct the revenue models of the broadcast industry. So therefore, if you are 100% dependent on advertising, and the advertising is measured by a spurious currency called television or people's meters, which are only 40,000 in number. Earlier, they were only 25,000, and they are supposed to extrapolate what 190 million television homes, which is 900 million people who watch cable and satellite, what their preferences are. Obviously, the system is absolutely flawed. And riding on this is a 40,000 crore advertising pie. And therefore, it is extremely important for the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, for the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, which is the regulator of the broadcast industry, insofar as the technical side is concerned, or as far as the business side is concerned, to have been extremely
Let me ask you my final question, Mr. Tiwari. You are a member parliament also. First of all, no government interference or political interference must be there as far as television broadcast is concerned. This is the freedom of speech which we are talking about. But as a member parliament, do you think that the currency needs to change? Right now, we seem to be having a quantitative currency to measure ratings. Do you think it should become a qualitative currency of measuring ratings, something like a national credibility rating? Judge the channel on the basis of credibility of the news, not pure numbers.
Sanket, unfortunately, I would like to very strongly disagree with you.
Okay.
I think the self-regulation is a complete sham. So therefore, this entire paradigm of self-regulation, which the broadcasting industry touts, is a chimera. It has completely failed. So self-regulation has to be embedded in a statutory framework for there to be robust oversight. And insofar as what should be the currency in order to measure the reach of a television channel, I think that's the subject of a much, much deeper discussion rather than a 1-minute response in television.
But do you think the time is now to start talking about it, to take this debate forward?
Well, in the sense, this is an extremely serious issue because this television rating points, or the TRP imbroglio, as I call it, or the tyranny of the TRPs, as I used to call it earlier, has completely vitiated the media environment of this country. And that's why, you saw this Bollywood soap opera play itself out for 2 months on news and current affairs channels when COVID-19, the Chinese aggression, the state of the Indian economy should have been something which should have been engaging the attention of those who claim to be or who are licensed as news and current affairs channels.
All right. All right. Mr. Manish Tiwari, thank you so much. But you didn't answer my question whether you are going to take this up, because see, ultimately this has to be a law. Should we be seeing a qualitative analysis of ratings and a credibility ratings rather than this quantitative analysis?
Well, Sanket, you've raised a point, and I would definitely apply myself to it. I have written very extensively on this issue over the past 5 years, and I didn't want to give you an off-the-bat response that A is better than B. I think you flagged an issue which is germane, that how credibility of a channel should be measured and how that should be taken into account by the advertisers when they decide their advertising spend. That's a fair point, but I think it requires deeper thought and deeper deliberation.
Okay. Mr. Manish Tiwari, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanket.
All right, let's just stop for a short break.